All right, it's live on YouTube. All right, ready?
Yeah.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Around the 412 Fantasy Football Podcast, proudly presented to you by Crowworthy, where winners are serving winners coast to coast with sports, gambling, and more. You follow at Crowworthy on Twitter. Visit us at the Pittsburgh City page at crowworthy.com, where you will find podcasts like this one, blogs, gambling advice, fantasy advice, and much more. I am Smitty. With me, as always, is my co-host, Donnie Druin. What
Smitty,
is good?
man. Yeah, I'm got a really good show ahead. I'm really excited to put some fantasy opinions out there in the ether for everybody.
Well, yeah, you know what? That's what I was going to start off by saying is, kind of week to week, people are getting the same stuff from us, our top five rankings, the waiver wire, that type of stuff, the usual stuff. This week, with it being about the halfway point until we get into the fantasy football playoffs, we thought, let's kind of switch things up this week. It's not going to be the same regurgitated stuff you can find in any show. Some unique opinions. We're going to give you our fantasy MVPs, our biggest busts, our best value pick, a second half riser, maybe a guy that's overachieving right now that we could see falling off in the second half. We're going to talk a little bit about Christian McCaffrey's potential return as early as Thursday. Le'Veon Bell made his Chiefs debut. What does that mean as far as his outlook for the rest of the season? And a guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And then we will still do the waiver wire stuff. So, yeah, I'm super excited about this show. People are probably going to think that we're idiots. That's the way it is. You can tweet at us and let us know. But, the reason that we are kind of switching things up, I always talk about it. I talked about it again last week. We're looking for ways to keep things fresh, keep things new, not keep giving you guys the same stuff. So if you have any opinions on what you'd like to see, how we can change, tweet at us, let us know. Let us know what you want to see, because we can do, more stuff where we're changing things up on a week-to-week basis. It's not going to be the same old stuff you can find on any fantasy football podcast. That's the biggest thing, is we don't want it to be like that. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. Yeah, I don't know where you want to start. I mean, MVP, I feel like that should probably be the last thing.
Sure.
I mean, that's the biggest award. MVP, we'll just save it for last. I feel like I might surprise some people with my pick for that. So before we get into that stuff, I say that we talk about, those two individual topics I said beforehand. Le'Veon Bell's Chiefs debut and also Christian McCaffrey's potential return coming as early as Thursday. Now with McCaffrey, with that being said, let's just go right there. Took the red jersey off and was back out there at practice today. They, designated him for return from the IR. One, do you think that we see him on Thursday? And if you're a Christian McCaffrey fantasy owner, how comfortable are you with putting him in the lineup?
That's tough. That's excuse me, very tough on both questions you just brought up. As a Christian McCaffrey owner, I've been waiting for CMC to return to the field for what feels like weeks now. Whenever he was first hurt, they said about 3 to 6 weeks, but they were hoping that he would come back within the 3 weeks. That's proven to be completely off the time frame. He's been out for a significant amount of time now, and people were kind of eyeballing the week 10 deadline as kind of the time he's going to come back. I think it all depends on your bench. I think if you do have the firepower to keep CMC out of your lineup for one more week, then go ahead and do it. Pull the plug on CMC, because even if he is active this week, who's to say that they don't want to just ease him in with like 5 or 10 touches this week? Still let Mike Davis kind of carry the torch at least for another week. There's just so much unknown to this entire situation. It's tough to gauge, and we're still 2 days away from CMC playing on a short week. Does he play? If he's already practicing, why not? I don't see why they would already have him take that designation off if they didn't at least plan on him, being a possibility. But on the other hand, I wouldn't expect a monster Christian McCaffrey performance to come on Thursday Night Football.
So how comfortable though? I mean, I keep putting you on the spot here
No, you're
asking
good.
questions, but I have one question that's going to be very interesting as a follow up here. But would you feel comfortable then more so playing him as a flex than an RB2? You know, say that you have a guy like an Antonio Gibson, who I'm going to bring up a little bit later on the show, who, you know, might be on your bench right now, but with the way that he's starting to produce, it seems like Washington realizes what they have in him. He's oddly enough, I saw a stat today. He's already has more touches this year than he's ever had in college at
Wow.
Memphis. Yeah. So I mean, this guy, you know, he's a late bloomer to the position. It seems like, but he's very explosive when he gets the ball in his hands. But that's neither here nor there right now. What I want to get at is if you have a guy like that, do you feel more comfortable playing him in your RB2 spot and maybe like Christian McCaffrey's your flex, and you can really like, you know, that's more stomachable, if you will, putting him in that spot.
I mean, you drafted Christian McCaffrey number one overall, most likely, and if he's healthy, you kind of have to play him. You know, you have to kind of roll the dice, and you know if he's active, you got to see what he can give you. You know, even though it's a short week, but we have to remember that you know he's been rehabbing for quite the amount of time. You know, I feel like if he wasn't really ready to go this week, you know, he wouldn't have made an effort to push and to become an uh, go from a non-contact player in practice to just a regular player in practice. I feel like he wouldn't have made that push. I feel like the team, with the success that Mike Davis has had, wouldn't rush Christian McCaffrey back. It looks like they're all good to go. But to answer your question, if they believe that, I feel like you kind of have to put him in the lineup and roll the dice. I think putting him in the flex is probably a good idea because if he doesn't play, then you can just sub him out with somebody else. But if he does play, you're not taking up either of your two running back spots. So,
So I was going to follow that up. We did get a question here, which I will get to in a second. But the follow up that I had was, say you're a guy that, you know, drafted Christian McCaffrey, number one overall, and you were fortunate enough to be able to grab Mike Davis on the waiver wire. So you have both those guys in your lineup. I mean, do you put both of them in there, or which one are you playing if it's just one?
yeah, you're kind of playing with fire if you put both of them in there because you're really banking on one of those guys to have a big game to kind of supplement for the other not really doing anything. I don't think two wrongs make it right in that sense. So, I feel like you got to roll with either one or the other. I think the next couple of days of practice and kind of leading up to the game should be very telling on where the Panthers think Christian McCaffrey's at and where Christian McCaffrey think he's at as well. So if you're in that predicament, I would really pay attention. I would be kind of refreshing your Twitter timeline 24/7, just to make sure you get the most accurate and updated news on CMC. Because if people say he looks 100%, if the Panthers think he's ready to go, I would plug him in and I would sit Mike Davis. But if there's any thought that the Panthers might even limit his touches on Thursday and you need to play a guy like Mike Davis, I would just roll with him.
Yeah, I mean it's a tough call, but I think I'm with you. I mean, I think that you drafted Chris McCaffrey for a reason. If he's active, he's got to be in your lineup. If you were fortunate enough where you have two other really good running backs, you can play him in a flex spot, then that's fantastic. But I just don't see a way that he's on your bench if he's active. So, we did get a question, like I said, standard scoring, Rojo or Gaskin, also Hollywood or T Higgins. Thanks in advance.
Gaskin's been playing very well this year, and I know I
Fournette got some extra run in Tampa as well last week, so Fournette could start really eating into those carries.
I've always been wary on the Buccaneers backfield, and especially this year whenever they brought in a guy like Fournette. That's tough. I would lean Gaskins just because I know he's going to get the touches week in and week out, as opposed to a guy like Rojo who, like I just said, he does, whenever he does get the touches and whenever the Buccaneers do rely on him, he's proven to produce a lot, but there's still a lot of unknown in that Buccaneers backfield. So I'd probably roll with Gaskin. What was the other question? T Higgins
or Hollywood Brown? Yeah.
That's tough, man. I don't know, because if Joe Hayden's on Hollywood Brown, then I don't like it. But if Steven Nelson's on Hollywood Brown, then I kind of do like it. We saw A.J. Brown have a very good game against the Steelers. We saw Corey Davis have a very good game against the Steelers as well. But the Titans' offense is a little bit more predicated at passing than the Ravens' offense is.
Honestly, that was an easier decision for me to make. I would go T. Higgins. That's easier for me to say than picking between the two running backs.
No, T Higgins has been very good this year. AJ Green kind of said, hello to the fantasy world. Had I think like 5 or 6 points last week, which is better than the goose eggs he's been dropping as of late. But
Yeah, I just look at, I mean, I know that their offensive line stinks, but I do believe in Joe Burrow
yeah,
being able to move the ball against Tennessee's defense. I mean, Tennessee, we talked about how good of a team they were. They were a tough matchup for the Steelers. Their defense, especially on third down, nothing to write home about. And, maybe Adoree Jackson comes back. I'm not sure what the status is on him. I don't think that they've taken him off IR yet, at least as of the last that I saw. So not sure that he will be back. And that defense, it's not great, So like I said, especially on third downs. So I lean T Higgins there. And I also am with you as far as Myles Gaskin over Rojo. So that's where I would be with those two. Okay. And then I wanted to talk about before we do these mid-season awards, if you will, mid-fantasy season awards, I should say, because we're not quite halfway through the NFL season. Le'Veon Bell goes to Kansas City, and we were kind of curious as to how like the timeshare would work out. And I don't know if we got a true indication in this game, just because they got a couple scores from their defense and special teams, which kind of flipped the game script on them. It was also very snowy in Denver, so they're not always going to play the way that they did. But breaking it down by snap percentage for the running backs, Clyde Edwards-Helaire played 52.9% of the snaps. Le'Veon Bell played 33%. DeAndre Washington played 10%, and Darrell Williams played 1% of snaps. So all four got a little bit of work. They were used to some capacity. But as you can see there, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is still playing over 50% of the snaps. Is that a trend going forward, or is that just Le'Veon Bell kind of being worked into the offense?
Sorry to clear my throat.
Very fun.
It's weird because they wouldn't sign Le'Veon Bell mid-season if, one, they had extreme confidence in a guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, or two, they didn't plan on using Le'Veon to good extent. And we've already seen Le'Veon be more productive in his first game as a Kansas City Chief than pretty much what we've seen in his entire stint as a New York Jet. But, it looks like he's finally in the right offense. It looks like he's finally in a place where his talents can be exploited for good. I think when you have two talented running backs like that, you just might have to ride the hot hand. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be the starter undoubtedly moving forward. But let's say Le'Veon rips off a couple of carries in the game and he starts to get hot. I don't think Andy Reid's dumb enough to kind of want to stick by a 50-50 split. Still want to get CEH's touches if Le'Veon's ripping up 10 to 15 yards per run. So it's a good problem for the Chiefs to have. It's a bad problem for fantasy owners to kind of try and dissect. And like you said, we got no good indication off of what the Chiefs planned on doing with Le'Veon. One, because this was his first game with the Chiefs, and he's still kind of getting used to the offense, still learning the playbook and all that stuff. And two, the Broncos did us no favors at all by playing a piss poor game against the Chiefs. Just in terms of game flow. So, like I said, CEH should still be the starter there. I mean, he's a first-round pick. He's been doing pretty decent this year, all things considered. But Le'Veon's there for a reason, and I think at very, very worst, it might end up like a. I was trying to think. Whenever like Dion Lewis was, kind of ripping it up in Tennessee. Yeah, Dion Lewis. I'm having a brain fart right now. Where Derrick Henry would just get like a lot of like the runs, and then they would turn to like Dion Lewis for like 5 or 6 passes a game.
Yeah.
I think both of them can still have decent roles in Kansas City, but it is so much unknown right now, man. It's crazy.
I thought about even like another situation I was in Tennessee. Do you remember when they had DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry, a young Derrick Henry? I mean, I went back and watched that 2017 game between the Steelers and Titans where we just mollywopped them on Thursday Night Football. But they had both those guys on the roster, and I was just like, oh, wow, that's right. They did have both those backs. And, yeah, you just wondered, I don't know. I still think at the end of the day, there's not going to be a game where, as long as they're both healthy, Le'Veon Bell plays more snaps than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But I think as a fantasy owner, you will be frustrated at times if, an entire series goes to Le'Veon, as we saw in that Denver game, because I do expect that could very well happen where it's just, Clyde Edwards-Helaire plays 2 series and then Le'Veon plays 1 series, something like that, like a whole series at a time.
It might be a situation like we've seen with like Alvin Kamara and Latavius Murray or Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, where like there is like a number one running back and they will get, a majority of the touches, but like the second running back in the stable, they're still going to get touches. They're still going to get looks. They're still going to play a majority of a handful of drives per game. So that might be the kind of situation we're looking at. But then again, I mean, we're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs defending Super Bowl champion, one of the better offensive masterminds in Andy Reid. Just fully loaded weapons already on that offense before adding Le'Veon Bell. So it might be dealer's choice, just depending on the defense and, what kind of looks you're giving them, because they've got weapons everywhere to hurt you.
Yeah, and I will say I don't think it ends up looking like the Ravens running back situation where they have literally all those guys and you never know who's going to lead the team and carries that weight to the snap percentage. I still think, Clyde Edwards-Helaire at the end of the day plays the most snaps week in and week out. But hey, if Le'Veon's your 1B, I mean, yeah, I think that just speaks to the talent that those guys have on offense. At the same time, they don't need him by any means. It was more so his decision to go there. He's chasing a ring right now, and there's not a better team to latch on with. So I think it's just a win-win situation for them, and you can use him however you want to use him. Get him, 10 touches a game. Let him roll.
Yeah, I was about to say, if CEH needs a breather, and you have to trot Le'Veon Bell out on the field, he's doing pretty okay. And part of that too might be, they might have been more than happy to keep him away from another AFC contender. So you just never know. Obviously, he's ring chased, and it looked like Kansas City was the perfect fit from day one of his days, after the New York Jets. But fantasy wise, man, it's a wait and see, but it's not a fun wait and see if you own CEH or Le'Veon.
Speaking of the Jets, that's their upcoming opponent.
Yeah, that's right.
So real quick, I didn't have this on here. How would you feel about playing Le'Veon in a fantasy lineup?
This week, they're with him still like for sure sitting backseat to CEH. I know they're playing the Jets, and obviously he's going to get a couple touches. I still wouldn't pull the trigger on him, and I know a lot of people drafted him super high, but man, like, I feel like at this point you've already got other established options on your bench and like through your lineup as well. And I just think immediate future Clyde Edwards-Helaire is still the guy.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you. It's like a desperation type flex play. I mean, we can look at Tyler Hurley's roster and he'd be in that roster for sure. But yeah, I'm not sure how many rosters I would play him in. Okay, so let's go to our halfway through the fantasy season awards, if you will. I think that we start with a guy that we expect to kind of fall off. If you look at the first half of production, I feel like this is kind of an easy pick for me. I might be taking, an easy way out with this. I'm going to go with Amari Cooper, and it's not necessarily about Amari Cooper. It's about the quarterback play, whether it be Ben DiNucci or if they bring in somebody, regardless, it's going to be Ben DiNucci for this week against Philly because of the COVID protocols and stuff. Regardless if they were to bring in somebody, that guy's not playing this week. But I just look at what that quarterback play is going to be like, and I don't like the situation. He's a guy that I expect to not be able to put up those numbers. As it stands right now, 6. He's wide receiver 7 in fantasy, and I just don't think that keeps up given the quarterback play that we're going to see in Dallas, and we have seen over the last 2 weeks. I expect it to be a lot more of that, not anywhere close to what Dak was giving them. So, not to no fault of his own, I think Amari Cooper falls off in the second half.
Yeah, and missing Dak Prescott is really just a kick in the ribs, just in terms of a lot of people drafting Amari Cooper super high and not necessarily getting the production. Although he did put up pretty decent numbers last week, and that's aside from Michael Gallup not doing anything and CeeDee Lamb not doing anything as well. It looks like the 2 games we've seen them play without Dak, Amari's still been able to, put up somewhat decent numbers week in and week out. So I had Amari as one of the second half fallers, as I call them. This guy, you might be surprised. I put down James Robinson. I hope I'm dead wrong because I just traded for him. He's currently ranked RB3. He's averaging a little over 20 points per game in PPR formats. Dude, Jacksonville's a mess right now, man. Jacksonville is a hot dumpster fire. I don't like it. This is coming off a game where James Robinson was the only running back to record carries out of a game. And so I feel kind of like asinine coming on the show and saying that I expect him to drop down performance-wise for the second half. I just don't know if he can do it for a full season. I haven't seen him play a full season. I don't know if he's able to, maintain that consistency week in and week out for a 16-game stretch. Two, like it just said, Jacksonville is a dumpster fire of an organization. You're talking about Gardner Minshew being benched week in and week out. It seems like they can't stop anybody. Game flow really isn't in James Robinson's repertoire right now because the Jaguars can't hold a lead over anybody. And, while he can catch the ball out of the backfield, he's definitely a run first kind of guy. He's Derrick Henry. If Derrick Henry didn't, have stone cold brick hands, because he still catches like 2 or 3 passes a game. I just don't like the situation. It's the unknown of James Robinson, fresh new guy on the scene mixed with the Jaguars being the Jaguars. And, I just think he doesn't maintain what he's done in the first half of the season. But like I said, I hope I'm dead wrong. I just traded for him. So I'm with everybody on hoping I'm wrong. So.
Yeah, I say Stubbs is definitely hoping you're wrong. He just put in the comments about James Robinson that he's brought his fantasy team back from the dead pretty much single-handedly. Yeah, you mentioned he's RB3 right now, and I actually am going to bring him up a little bit later on the show in a different position here, a different award that he's going to be winning. But I definitely understand the concerns. If you were to tell me that he's going to finish as RB3, I'd think you're crazy. So even if you talk about dropping a little bit, I think he does fall out of that position. I guess the question is just how far. Does he fall completely out of the top 10? And again, to your point, with the way that Jacksonville is playing in these games right now, they're playing catch up. That does not favor, James Robinson because they have a receiving back there in Chris Thompson. Yep. That you figure they're going to use a little bit. You mentioned that he was the only one that got a touch this last week. That's crazy to me because, they have a receiving back in Chris Thompson and they were losing that football game. So
yeah, Thompson just got put on the COVID IR list.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I did see that. Okay.
Thompson's put on there, and then Raquel Armstead.
Yeah, his situation's weird.
Yeah, he's out for the entire year. So the opportunity for James Robinson is absolutely there, and I definitely understand that. I'm one of those guys who thinks opportunity is everything in fantasy football. But dude, the Jaguars look like they're getting ready to host Trevor Lawrence in for a very nice draft visit here in a couple.
Hey, not if the Jets can beat them to it.
True.
Okay, so my biggest riser in the second half, and I said that I may have mentioned him already, it's going to be Antonio Gibson of the Washington football team here. A wide receiver / running back in college, and he's a running back in the NFL. He has outperformed his projection 5 times already this week in 7 games. And if you look at these weeks recently, he scored 18 points last week. He had 20 points a couple weeks before that. He has a couple games where he's scored over 11, and he's just now really starting to be given the rock. They kept trying to make J.D. McKissick a thing there, and, maybe he could touch the ball every once in a while. But this team is going to go as Antonio Gibson goes. He's the most dynamic player on that offense, not named Terry McLaurin. So give the ball to Antonio Gibson and let him do his thing. I think this is a guy that is destined to have a big second half.
Yeah, it looks like the Red Sea is kind of parting for him to have just a monster second half. I definitely agree with you. He was the guy I did consider before I kind of dug deeper and I found this guy. A big name just in terms of fantasy football, but hasn't really performed a lot, just kind of due to the talent around him. My second half riser is going to be Jarvis Landry. He's currently a wide receiver 3rd right now. He's still averaging over 10 points per game PPR formats. Odell Beckham is out of the picture now for the rest of the season. I don't think any of the other Browns pass catchers can leapfrog a guy like Jarvis Landry to the number 1 receiver spot. And let's be honest, Smitty, before the season, we talked about the Browns offense potentially clicking and looking like things are going to go their way. They're 5-2 right now. Their offense for the most part has shown up. Jarvis Landry has shown up despite Odell Beckham Jr. still commanding targets, week in and week out. And now without Odell there, a lot of people think Baker Mayfield is playing a lot better. And the presence of Jarvis Landry, is a big reason for that. So I think Jarvis Landry is going to have a bountiful second half of the season now that he's the undisputed wide receiver 1 there in Cleveland.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, I don't want to spoil anything that you might have potentially later in the show. For your waiver wires, do you have any Cleveland players on there?
I don't.
Okay, so real quick, I want to say then, because you mentioned it, this isn't a guy that I have on there, but as far as you mentioned, like with guys leapfrogging, I don't expect him to. Rashard Higgins is probably a guy to watch the rest of the season as well. He's only targeted like 5 times before we played them, but he had already scored 2 touchdowns. Like when they throw the ball to him, good things happen, but they weren't throwing the ball to him. And you mentioned the targets that a guy like Odell Beckham Jr. commands. And I'm not saying this is a better football team without him, or Baker Mayfield is better without him. I think that's yet to be proven. But without OBJ in the field, the opportunity is definitely going to be there for a guy like Rashard Higgins, maybe even a deeper related guy like Donovan Peoples-Jones. But like, I think Jarvis Landry definitely sees an uptick. But really, it's Rashard Higgins for me that's going to see a huge uptick just because of where he was to where he's going to be. Jarvis Landry already had, somewhat of a floor. Now, that just gets higher and the ceiling gets higher. For Rashard Higgins, that floor was pretty low because he only caught like 5 passes, like I mentioned just a couple weeks ago. Now that ceiling, I don't know where it is.
Yeah. And, I think that situation might be a little bit akin to AB in Pittsburgh. There's this diva wide receiver one presence, that's going to need targets week in and week out. And, the quarterback almost forcing throws to them weekly and, good things not happening whenever you force said throws. Now that they're out of the picture, we've already kind of talked about it, and you said it's yet to be shown, but a lot of people do think that Baker looked a lot better without Odell on the field, just like people think Ben looks a lot better without AB on the field, forcing throws. The interceptions are way down this year for him. So, it might be a blessing in disguise, as bad as that sounds, for the rest of the Cleveland offense, just in terms of spreading the ball and kind of evening things out on the playing field.
Right. My value pick, maybe he wasn't even picked, but again, a guy that's already been brought up, it's got to be James Robinson. You mentioned he's RB3. If he was drafted, it was very late. The situation with Leonard Fournette kind of still playing out or had just come to an end in Jacksonville when most drafts took place. So James Robinson, again, probably not even a guy that was drafted in most leagues, unless you were drafted super late this year, which is probably what you should have been doing given, the climate of the NFL going into the year and kind of all the question marks of being up in the air. But that's neither here nor there. James Robinson was a guy you either got super late or didn't get drafted at all. You got lucky enough to pick up on the waiver wire, and he's given you RB1. We talked about him being like an RB2. He's RB3 right now in all of football. So that's definitely, he's putting up RB1 production right now. Yep. Whether that keeps up or not, I'm not sure. But at least at this point, he's got to be the best value guy in fantasy football.
Definitely. I wanted to put him down, but I just didn't think he was drafted in very many leagues. So
he got drafted in my last one, so I guess I kind of cheated, but
no, you're good. I look no further than a great value pick who turned out to be a Louis Vuitton bag than James Robinson so far. I mean, what a steal he's been.
I will say one more thing that I want to add to that is you just got to look at the position there too. Running backs, the most important position to draft in fantasy football. To define an RB1 like that, whether it be late in the draft or on the waiver wire, again, can't ask for much more. You mentioned, finding a Louis Vuitton bag, going to a dump. That's essentially what happened.
Yep. So my pick for best value pick so far, I wanted to go kind of a little off script. I was looking at guys who were drafted kind of mid-round to early mid-round, kind of depending on how many people were in your league, all that good stuff. I went Kyler Murray, best value draft pick so far. He's drafted as quarterback 5 from the ADP of 58. So in 10-man leagues, he's going about the end of round 5, early round 6. He leads all fantasy football players in total points scored this season. He's been absolutely phenomenal, averaging just under 28 points per game at the quarterback position. If you were able to wait and didn't take a guy like Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen or Dak Prescott, he's paying dividends for you in a big way. And I know a lot of people don't value the quarterback position a lot, but you still need to roll one out every week. So, the fact that Kyler Murray has taken the next step, and I feel like we've been on the Kyler train since day one. He's taken that next step. He's became one of the big fantasy football quarterbacks that we've hoped him to be. I just think that goes to show, he's definitely paying dividends for people who drafted him in those mid rounds.
Yeah, I mean, he came into the year as my QB5, when we did the pre-draft show. And ahead of him, Dak Prescott, he just mentioned, who got injured. Otherwise, he'd be up on this list. Lamar Jackson, Pat Mahomes, and who else would it have been?
QBs 1 through 4 were Jackson, Mahomes, Allen, Prescott, and then Kyler.
Did I have Allen in there, though? I'm trying to think if I would have had him in there.
Did you have Rodgers in there?
No, definitely not. Because I wasn't that, it's great to see the year that he's had, but from a fantasy standpoint, Aaron Rodgers hasn't really done much in 2 seasons. So I definitely didn't have him in my top 5 coming into this year. But yeah, I mean, he's bounced back in a nice way. maybe I can't imagine it being Josh Allen just because I know that Beefy was getting on me about not having him there. I don't know, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, I mean, Kyler Murray, number one fantasy football player right now in terms of points. Again, the running back position more important, the receiver position more important, but Kyler Murray, taking him round 6, you get the leading scorer in fantasy. That's great value. So, but yeah, we can give ourselves a pat on the back for that one. And then moving along to my bust. Stubbs mentioned a good name to me earlier. I saw that he tweeted at us and said it's got to be Tyreek Hill, and that's probably a more fair pick than what I went with. I went with Michael Thomas because a guy that's going mid to back end of round 1, who you've gotten one game out of and not even a full game, and looks like he's coming back, gets suspended, and now he's got a hamstring injury. So it's more just so like a frustration thing he hasn't been on the field. You can't play your number one guy most likely. And luckily enough for me, he got taken one pick before me when I was going to take him. And then I got Devontae Adams, who,
nice.
Look at Devontae Adams. He missed 2 games and very well still could finish as wide receiver 1 overall in fantasy.
Yeah.
Just look at his projected points for the rest of the year and everybody else's. So, yeah, if you're a Michael Thomas owner, you got to be completely frustrated with the situation that's going on. And that's why he's my my biggest bust for the year.
Yeah, he's definitely the number one leading candidate when we talk about fantasy football bust. His was just due to injury, so I didn't include him on my list. Just because he's missed so much time, due to injuries. So I didn't want to really pin that on him because, I feel like we could say the same probably about Christian McCaffrey or Saquon Barkley, just not being there. But, injuries are just something you can't control. Being called a slant boy and throwing hands in practice is probably a whole other issue here nor there. A lot of people might not like this pick, and I definitely understand why, but I just went from the technical definition of a bust. You pick somebody super high, they're not doing what you drafted them to do. Joe Mixon is my bust of the year so far. He's drafted top 10 in fantasy drafts every single day of the week, has just one game over 16 PPR points. He's struggling with injuries. It's definitely not his fault. He's got a not great offensive line. He's got a rookie quarterback. There's a huge workload being expected out of him, thrown on his shoulders. He's just not producing where he's being drafted at. And I know a lot of people had high expectations for him. There's still a whole lot of time for him to turn it around, but Mixon just hasn't produced consistently to the point where people drafted him to be at.
Yeah, I mean, another guy that I would potentially look at, just because now you got me thinking about running backs, Kenyon Drake was being drafted pretty highly. Another guy, I mean, can you consider, what about, I mean, we've talked about him a little bit already now, another running back there. Like, what about Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm looking at his numbers.
He was being drafted early second round at worst,
Yeah, his best week was week 1, 19.8 points. So not to say the biggest bust, but again, you're not getting quite the production that was expected of him. I mean, Mike Davis has more points than him. Kareem Hunt has more points than him. You mentioned Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon has more points than him. He hasn't had the big game, but 5.6 was his lowest. He scored 7. I mean, that's kind of he has an outlier week of 39, which obviously boosted his total. So, but yeah, I mean, if you're just looking at it big picture like that, Clyde Edwards-Helaire's there, and Josh Jacobs is right there with him as well. So
yeah, just a whole lot of guys. You expected to have great years, and they're just not kind of popping off week to week like expecting them to. Granted, they do have that 1 week where they do go out and show out on the field, but other than that, it's very quiet weeks from these guys so far.
I mean, our guy Todd Gurley's right with them.
Yeah.
He's put together 20-point weeks in 2 of the last 3. So
yeah, he's starting to heat up. We did kind of acknowledge before the season that the Falcons were going to almost limit his touches, just kind of make sure they got the bang for their buck on that 1-year contract. But it looks like they're turning the wheels loose. And, the Falcons nearly won another game, last Sunday, before, coming up victorious the Sunday prior. But yeah, I feel like Gurley's been super big for that offense just in terms of moving the ball, and he's popping off as of late.
Okay, what position does your MVP play?
Running back.
Mine's a receiver. For the Seattle Seahawks, Tyler Lockett is going to be my MVP.
Really?
2, 3, touchdown games, touchdown performances already this year, which, you could look at that and say it's been an outlier. But looking at his season total, and I am a Tyler Lockett owner, let me pull up the fantasy points here because I believe he is only behind Calvin Ridley in terms of points. So I was kind of torn on which way to go between those two guys. You look at his game log, though, he does have 2 games where he scored under 10, but his other 4 games, 13, 16, 32, and 45. Now, they are on their bye this week, and they have a tough stretch of game. Or I'm sorry, they were on their bye last week. Never mind. They have a tough stretch of games coming up right now. San Fran, Buffalo, LA, they're all in the bottom 7 in terms of, well, I should say top 7 in limiting wide receivers to production. So we're going to find out here quickly. But when you're playing with the MVP candidate in Russell Wilson, the way that he's been on fire, and again, DK Metcalf's there too. DK Metcalf was limited to Patrick Peterson this week. That's not always going to be the trend. Is he going to be wide receiver 1 for that team more often than not? I don't know, but just to this point, having him on my team, I know for a fact he's the only reason I'm where I'm at in the standings. So I have that bias where he is my MVP because he's been literally my team MVP for my team.
Yeah, and I'm also a Tyler Lockett owner. He got me 58 points last week in my home league. Just incredible. But, I mean, you look at the 2 big games he's had this year, and then you look at, the other games where, he's been fairly quiet, between last week and 3 weeks ago where he had, a big 3 touchdown performance. He was pretty quiet. DK Metcalf.
Sandwiched in between those 2 massive games was, again, I said he had 2 games under 10. Those were 4.9, 6.4, and then they were on their bye before he blew up against Arizona.
Yeah, I don't want to call him boom or bust just because I really like Tyler Lockett. I think week in, week out, he's always, that big presentable option for the Seahawks offense. But with DK Metcalf's emergence, he's definitely not the sole wide receiver wonder anymore. And it almost feels like as if they'll, kind of just rotate week to week, just in terms of, okay, who's set to have this big game, who's set to kind of fall off and fade into the background. So, yeah, I've been very happy with Tyler Lockett so far. Definitely more boom than bust this year, but the lows have been pretty low, almost as high as the highs have been highs. My MVP pick might, I understand why somebody would pick like other players for MVP, but this guy has just shown up every week, especially for my team as well. It's Alvin Kamara, averaging 28 fantasy points per game. His worst scoring performance was 19.9 points in PPR formats. He's been healthy this year. He's played in every matchup. No matter what that matchup is, he's always produced so far up to this point. Granted, I do think that is a main beneficiary of Michael Thomas being out. But, even if so, he still presents himself as that option. And he's just been undeniably great yet consistent for my team week in and week out.
Yeah, I wanted to mention, so I have the team that I have Tyler Lockett on. Guess who my RB1 is?
Alvin Kamara?
Yeah, it's literally those 2. So, that would have been probably the better pick for me to go with my MVP because, again, you mentioned the consistency that he brings to the table. His weeks this year, 23.7, 38.4, 44.7, 20.9, 19.9, bye week, 22.8. He has, just looking at it by position, he has – and again, scoring might be different. At least in this league, he has 31 more points than RB2. I mean, we talked about, how close the gaps can be, and especially for quarterbacks, and this is why you go running back early. That's an unbelievable gap between number 1 and number 2 at their position.
I mean, yeah, I couldn't be happier with him, especially last week whenever I had a quad running of Herbert, Kamara, Robinson, and Lockett getting me almost 200 points by themselves. So,
yeah, I have a lead where I went against Devontae Adams and Tyler Lockett, so did not win that one.
Hey, pouring one out for you, brother. My condolences.
I did not win that one. Okay, let's move along now to our waiver wire talk here. I asked if you had any Browns because I do have a Brown on here. My waiver wire quarterback is going to be Baker Mayfield, owning just 33% of Yahoo leagues. And I put on here, not saying it's my opinion on it. It's out there, though, in the world. Is he better without OBJ? I mean, we're going to see what Cleveland's offense looks like without Odell Beckham Jr. the rest of this year. And Baker Mayfield, with what he did last week, and again, it was against Cincinnati, so take it with a grain of salt. We all saw the numbers going against Cincinnati versus everybody else. But, I think this is a guy worth taking a flyer on with the second half that he put together. When you're looking for a guy, again, owning just 33% of leagues, if you're out there, you're desperate for a quarterback, I think you do a lot worse than what Baker Mayfield's going to give you.
Yeah, and we'll see if Baker performs anything like he did after losing OBJ last Sunday. I think fantasy owners are going to find quite the steal here on the waiver wire with him. I went Teddy Bridgewater versus the Falcons on Thursday Night Football, owned just 30% of ESPN leagues. He scored at least 25 points the last 3 out of 4 games. He faces a Falcon secondary that ranks dead last in fantasy points versus quarterback. So I think the matchup's all there. I'm not a huge fan of Thursday Night Football. I don't know why. I think it's just me. I don't like my players playing, before Sunday.
I mean, it's a short week. Yeah, guys that aren't well rested.
Yeah, I just think the overall product just isn't good enough, to, induce me to want to put a guy out there. But with Teddy B balling like he is, and with a matchup like that, this game could have been played on Tuesday. I probably still would have suggested him.
Yeah, I've used him, I think, in 2 of the last 3 weeks. I just didn't want to go back to the well too many times, but definitely a solid option there. I would pick him over Baker Mayfield if they were both out there, honestly, especially given the matchups that they have. My wide receiver is going to be Brandon Ayuk, owning just 50% of leagues. Goes against Seattle this week, who are the worst secondary in football right now, and they just lost their best coverage corner. So I don't know if they're going to get Jamal Adams back or not, but regardless, I like Brandon Ayuk here. Deebo Samuel going to be out. So, I mean, behind George Kittle, there's plenty of opportunity. I'm going with my guy right here.
Yeah, I also have Brandon Ayuk as my wide receiver waiver pickup for the week, 20% owned in the ESPN leagues. You just said he's coming off a hot performance versus the New England secondary. Caught 6 passes for 115 yards. Deebo Samuel's likely going to be out for a couple weeks. Faces a very, very scrumptious-looking Seattle secondary this week. And, yeah, I think he's been performing very well, as of late, just the small looks he has been given. And, now's the time for him to produce.
Yeah, I mean, the other guy here I mentioned a little bit earlier, but I didn't want to flood it with Cleveland players anyway. Rashard Higgins is a guy that I would look at too, owned in less than 50% of the leagues right now, just because obviously OBJ going down. I think there's going to be a ton of opportunity there for a guy like Rashard Higgins. So I would definitely consider him as well. I feel pretty comfortable playing either one of those guys this week in a flex spot. My running back going to be LaMichael Pirine, kind of going off the board here, owning just 17% of the leagues, playing for the New York Jets, who, I mean, obviously playing for the New York Jets, he hates his life. Their fans hate their lives, but listen, somebody has to be given the ball there without Le'Veon. Between him and the old man Frank Gore, who every time that he gets the ball has to grab his walking cane before taking the ball. I think that LaMichael Pirine's stock is on the rise. We saw him find the end zone this past week, and yeah, I would feel pretty comfortable taking a flyer on him. Looking at the other guys that are owned in less than 50% of the leagues. Again, this is a pretty buy heavy week, so there's not a whole lot out there.
Definitely not, no. And my waiver wire guy is just right at that 50% mark on ESPN. I went Boston Scott versus the Dallas Cowboys this week.
Yeah, he's owned more than 50.
Sanders. If Miles Sanders is unable to go, it looks like he might be able to play, so we'll see with that. But if Sanders is out, Scott has a great matchup versus a Dallas defense that just can't seem to figure anything out right now. They just got rid of Everson Griffin in the trade today, but it's not like he was doing much for them to begin with. Scored 18 points last week, and I just think that momentum and game flow should kind of be good for him. He catches a decent amount of passes out of the backfield. I don't expect that game to be a barn burner by any sense and mean, but Boston Scott should be a big part of that game plan.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking, like, even if Miles Sanders comes back, I mean, I think Boston Scott should have a little bit of a role there. I was pretty impressed with what we saw against the Giants last Thursday night, that touchdown catch he had especially. And Miles Sanders, should he play, I mean, this is a guy that's been banged up multiple times this year already and missed time. He's not going to be at 100%. I think that Boston Scott has earned some run in that offense.
No, definitely. But Philadelphia has never shied away from running a running back by committee, and I know they really view Miles Sanders as the guy, and whenever he's healthy, he is the guy, in this community. But You just got to ride the hot hand. Whoever's going to win you football games, just got to hand them the ball. And Boston Scott last week did just that.
Stubbs said, "What do we think about Mike Williams?" Mike Williams was my waiver guy last week. I think that you talked about boomer bust guys, and he's been that for a lot of his career. He's a jump ball specialist, turns those 50-50s into like 80-20s, and we see it, on a every other week basis. But those weeks where he doesn't have that one catch, the floor seems pretty low. But I was looking at the health of Keenan Allen, which is kind of up in the air. Keenan Allen, a guy that's been in and out of the lineup over the last 2 years, it seems like. And the play of Justin Herbert, which you think, if they're going to let him, if they're going to unleash that arm and let him throw the ball down the field, that's going to get the best out of Mike Williams. So I think Mike Williams should be owned in every league. As far as like a comfort level with him, I'm not sure that he's going to be most people's best option at flex. If you play 2 flexes, maybe. But he's definitely worth, having on your bench for sure.
Yeah. But if Keenan Allen's going to get 40 targets a game, I'm just not great and willing to roll him out in the lineup week to week. I did that last week. I tried to stack him and Herbert, and I was really excited because I know Justin Herbert can, just fly the what out of the football. Williams didn't get that many targets, and it looks
and they put up close to 40.
Yeah, while Keenan Allen returned healthy as ever, he looked phenomenal. Keenan Allen looked like the receiver we all knew him to be when Phillip Rivers was throwing him the ball. But Mike Williams is, I think you hit it right on the head, the definition of boom or bust at the wide receiver position. But whenever you're in an 8-man league like me, there's plenty of other options for me to roll with, not super deep benches. So I think I'm dumping him this week in favor for Ayuk.
Yeah, I would do that as well. If you have the opportunity to do that, looking at their numbers, their receiving numbers from their last game, Keenan Allen goes 10 for 125, and then nobody else has more than 5 catches. 84 yards for Jalen Guyton, who is kind of just a field stretcher himself. Jackson has 5. Virgil Green has 1 for 26. Josh Kelly has 5. Hunter Henry with 3 for 23. That's kind of disappointing as well. Donald Parham is the tight end that scores the touchdown. And then Mike Williams at the bottom of this list, just 1 reception for 4 yards.
Yep.
So, yeah, again, I think that, with what he presents, he's worth being on your bench, but he's not a confident play for anybody right now. I think at this point, he's just a bench stash that you hope gets on the same page with Herbert as we go, throughout the season. Because, again, Justin Herbert's attributes, you think, play to the strengths of a guy like Mike Williams, being able to stretch the field with that arm that we've seen that Justin Herbert has. So,
if Keenan Allen's out, I would play.
That's another thing I was going to bring up. Yeah,
every single league known the man, but it's just a night and day whenever Keenan Allen is present there, and rightfully so because Allen's a phenomenal receiver. But yeah, Mike Williams tends to disappear a lot, and it's not like this is new. Like you said earlier, he's done this almost his entire career. He's been in the NFL.
Right. Okay. And then my tight end, going to be a homer pick here. It's going to be Eric Ebron, owning 46% of Yahoo leads right now. You just look at the red zone potential, but as well as the fact that he's coming off back-to-back games where he's third on the team in targets. That alone to me at such a volatile position as the tight end position, he's got to be up there. So again, he's owning just 46% of Yahoo leagues. I think just the opportunity that he's had, and not that it's necessarily, he's not churning out fantasy points by any means. He's not like in that upper echelon of tight ends. And there's another guy in that room in Vance McDonald that once in a while is going to take some catches away, although we haven't seen that a whole ton. But Eric Ebron, Pittsburgh Steelers, we know how Ben feels about his tight ends. He's going to try to get Eric Ebron involved. We've seen it a lot this year. I think he could do a lot worse on the waiver wire.
Yeah, especially at the tight end position as well, where, the well is just super dry when it comes to trying to get tight ends. So, Eric Ebron definitely, one of those higher upper echelon guys you can grab if you can grab him. I went a little bit deeper for my tight end waiver wire pick of the week. I went Richard Rodgers, Philadelphia tight end, owned in just 4% of ESPN leagues.
Wow.
And Zach Ertz are both on IR right now. He scored 14.5 points in PPR leagues last week versus the New York Giants. Cowboys ranked 20th defensively in terms of allowing points per games to tight ends. I'll just roll the dice here and say that he could probably have another decent game. As long as Carson Wentz is healthy and as long as the Cowboys defense remains the Cowboys defense, the Philadelphia loves their tight ends. And, while Richard Rodgers was used as a mostly run blocking tight end prior to this, it looks like he's getting a lot of looks in passing game now.
Yeah, I feel like he has to. I mean, you look at what Philly has there. Deshaun Jackson goes down again on Thursday Night Football because they tried to, for some reason, have him returning punts coming off an injury. But that's neither here nor there. Yeah, I think that the opportunity is definitely going to be there for Richard Rodgers. Another, honestly, a name that I considered was between those two. Just felt like Ebron was probably the safer pick there. But yeah, I think that's a good pickup. Stubbs just asked us real quick too, that he's trying to get Carlos Hyde off of waivers, and what we thought about that. Chris Carson, we talked about guys that have kind of been in and out of the lineup. I mean, this is the second or third time now that he's come out of the lineup during a game, and Carlos Hyde's gotten in there and gotten some run. And now you look ahead, is he going to be ready for the next week? And it looks like Chris Carson's going to be week to week, so he'll miss at least one game. Carlos Hyde in that Seattle offense, I think you do a lot worse than having him, for at least 1 week.
Yeah, it's only going to be a short-term rental, so don't expect anything long-term. But like you said, Chris Carson hasn't been the healthiest back in the road either. It looks like he might be out for a minimum of at least 1 week. So he'll get some run time out of that. But I mean, you can do a lot worse on the waiver wire. And like you just said, Seattle's offense with Carlos Hyde as the lead running back, you kind of got to like those chances.
Yeah, in a game that, going against the 49ers, I mean, at least I think a lot of points are going to be put up on the board. When you talk about Seattle's offense, San Fran's defense, not all that bad, but you look at San Francisco's offense against Seattle's defense, it's kind of, Seattle's offense can put up points against anybody, and you feel like San Fran's the offense is going to be able to put up points because of how bad Seattle's defense is. So I think in this game, you're going to see a lot of points. I think it's going to be a game where Carlos Hyde could be involved, from start to finish. I don't think Seattle gets up by a bunch or, is down by so many points that they have to come back. I think game script is going to be favorable for him to be involved the entire way through.
Definitely, yeah. And, we've seen the catch passes out of the backfield as well. And it's not like Russell Wilson doesn't like checking down, to, his guys like Chris Carson or any other running back playing. So I think Carlos Hyde, should he be in there for a minimum 1 week, I think we'll get a lot of looks both in the rushing and passing attack.
We just got somebody else popped in here with another question. Someone in my league offered me Josh Allen for Justin Herbert 1-for-1.
No.
Really?
Wait, hold on. Would he be trading for Justin Herbert?
He gets Josh Allen.
Yeah, I'd say no.
Really?
Dude, Herbert looks phenomenal right now, man.
Yeah.
Herbert's playing like people thought Josh Allen would play this year. And like Herbert doesn't use his legs a ton, but he still is able to pick up yards with his feet. But dude, Herbert's just slinging it right now, man. Like he's put up monster games week after week.
So yeah, I'm looking at it. Herbert obviously didn't play week 1 against Cincinnati, but he's played every week since then. 23, 15, 24, 27, 38 against Jacksonville. And then if we take a look here at Josh Allen, I know the last 3 weeks haven't been all that great. 28, 34 and a half, 32, 25, 18, 16, 16.
I wouldn't, but if you're looking at this just non-objectively or objectively, you ask yourself if you think the Bills offense can kind of get their shit together and regroup and rebound. And you have to ask yourself if you think Justin Herbert is going to keep up this frantic pace at the quarterback position.
Yeah. Right now, Josh Allen, number 3 player in fantasy. Herbert, number 51. Again, he didn't play week 1. And I'm also looking at the rest of their schedules too here.
Yeah, you have to Justin Herbert already went on his bye.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm trying to find Josh Allen's bye is in week 11 as well. So that might be something to consider.
Herbert has matchups still against Jacksonville. I'm sorry, not Jacksonville. He just played Jacksonville. Against Vegas, who gives up the 4th most points. Atlanta, who gives up the most. And Vegas again, because they haven't played each other yet. Also, the Jets are sprinkled in there. They play each other. Buffalo's given up the 15th most, so right around the halfway point. I don't know. I think this might be. I think I would go Allen. This might be the first time that we.
Allen has the bye in week 11. Right. Faces the Chargers, front seven. After that, it goes on the road to San Francisco, a team whose defense is looking very good right now. Comes back, plays against Pittsburgh week 14, week 15 at Denver in Mile High, and then week 16 at New England. So that's what his playoff schedule looks like.
Right, yeah. Pittsburgh, Denver, New England for Allen. For Herbert, it's what? What's 14, 15, 16?
14, 15, 16.
Oh, Atlanta, Vegas, Denver.
And Denver.
That is a better playoff schedule.
It is.
We're really not giving this guy much help.
No, I know. I say Herbert just because I've believed in him from day one. I've put him as a waiver wire guy on the show multiple times. I've picked him up on my own team. I've started him on my own team. I've seen the success that he's given me. I've seen Josh Allen not produce the last 3 weeks. And, as of right now, Herbert's stock is definitely higher than Josh Allen's. But like I said earlier, it all depends on if you think the Bills' offense is going to rebound and if you think Justin Herbert is going to continue the pace or if he's going to hit a rookie wall.
You know what? I'm on board with Herbert too, because for this reason. Also, where they play their home games late in the season, you're going to see Buffalo get cold and snowy. That's not going to happen for Justin Herbert. I think I'd lean Herbert too. But what I was going to say is if it was a league where your quarterbacks didn't get points for running, I would definitely go Herbert. But
that's leagues that exist.
No.
Quarterbacks don't get points for running.
No. I'm saying hypothetically that were a thing. If there was, Tyler Hurley would probably be in it. But but no, if that were a thing, I probably would definitely go Herbert. Looking at their rest of their season schedule and also the weather conditions that are going to play into that late in the season, I'm taking Herbert too by a little bit, because I do still think that Josh Allen is very capable of being week in and week out a top 10 guy just because of what he adds with his legs.
Definitely.
So, but yeah, I'm with you in leaning Herbert. You and me looking at the game logs talk me into it.
Yeah, you count that with the weather, the sick uniforms you get to watch them playing and everything.
That's true. Look good, play good.
Yeah. Sorry.
What's the whole thing? Pat McAfee says, look good, play good, feel good, live good, die good. Is that it?
I guess I know Dion said, if you look good, you feel good. If you feel good, you play good, you eat good.
That's good too. I might have to clip that, turn it into an audio, and just start off the show by saying that.
Yeah. I'd be down.
I do got to tell you guys about some of our sponsors real quick. Which intro do I want to use? I would go with a football one. All right. So football's back, people, and that means it's time to throw in your team's colors and make sure you don't fumble your grooming below the waist. Our partners at Manscaped are here to save your boys from a Robert Spillane hit, so you stay clean and take care of yourself where it matters most. Manscaped is here with a surefire touchdown with the best tools for your grooming experience. Manscaped spent 18 months perfecting the greatest ball hair trimmer ever and just released the new and improved Lawnmower 3.0 trimmer. It's simply the best hygiene tool for the modern man. Because of the ceramic blade and skin-safe technology, your snags will be reduced. Their Perfect Package 3.0 comes with the new and improved Lawnmower, which is waterproof, cordless body hair trimmer, performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag for when you are done quarantining. The Perfect Package 3.0 also comes with Crop Preserver and Crop Reviver. The Preserver is an anti-chafing ball deodorant, which ensures that your afternoon stroll doesn't end up with your balls sticking to your leg. The Crop Reviver is a spray-on toner for your balls. It's made with a soothing aloe and witch hazel extracts that will give your balls a boost. If you're listening to me now and you would like to purchase any of the above products or anything else on their website, you can hit the manscaped.com, put all that stuff in a cart, go to checkout, enter the code 412 at checkout, and that'll get you 20% off plus free shipping. Again, that's code 412 at checkout at manscaped.com, 20% off plus free shipping.
Could have said it better myself.
So that's for your hair down there. And then if you're also looking to take care of your hair up top, your head of hair, which I don't have much of, You need to head to Keats Barbershop. Keats Barbershop is an old-fashioned barbershop. It's located at 180 Brighton Avenue in Rochester, PA. He's open 11 to 7 Tuesday through Friday, 9 to 4 on Saturday. And every Tuesday is $5 off for military personnel, first responders, and nurses. Again, that's Keats Barbershop at 180 Brighton Avenue in Rochester, PA. All right. Other than that, I think we can call it a show.
Yeah. Smitty, I'm actually free tomorrow. If there was anything you wanted to let people know about tomorrow, I'm absolutely free. Just anything on your mind, give me something to listen to.
Yeah, tomorrow. So I don't know how many people in the fantasy football community are also Pittsburgh Pirates fans or baseball fans in general. But if you are, tomorrow and around the 412 at 5 p.m. Eastern, we will be joined by Pirates third baseman Ke'Bryan Hayes. Ke'Bryan is fresh off his rookie year. Technically, he'll still be eligible to win Rookie of the Year next year, but he was the September Rookie of the Month. So fresh off doing that, a phenomenal month of baseball since he was called up. Hell of a way to end the 2020 season. Gave Pirate fans something to look forward to. He's going to be joining us tomorrow to talk about all that and more. Son of a ball player. So we're excited to talk to him, find out more about his upbringing, what got him to the Pirates, and his first month in the majors. So again, tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern, you can find me, Tyler, and Ke'Bryan Hayes right here at youtube.com/c/around the 412. Until then, this has been Smitty. It's been Donnie, part of the Crowworthy Network, and we'll talk to you next time.